We got news on J.J. McCarthy's knee. It isn't great. Let's pick up the pieces. Welcome to Locked On Vikings.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. You can find the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts, whether it is SiriusXM, where you can find live broadcasts of all Vikings games. Just search out Vikings on the SiriusXM app. You can also find the show on YouTube or Amazon Fire and Roku if you download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Or, of course, search out Locked On Vikings wherever it is you listen to find audio material. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Today on the show, we'll talk about the meniscus tear that J.J. McCarthy suffered, and I'll go into some depth of what it means timeline-wise, typically, based on some of the research I did for an article I wrote at Wide Left. And that's, to be honest, not a very long conversation because there's a lot of answers we still don't have there. So afterwards, let's just cheer ourselves up by talking about how cool Dallas Turner is, because he's really cool. I did a film breakdown of his for him on Patreon as well, patreon.com/LukeBryanNFL if you want a little more of a video component. So first things first. Kevin O'Connell had a press conference from, I think, Cleveland, or maybe they hadn't quite left to Cleveland yet, from his office with Vikings media, and informed the media that J.J. McCarthy had an MRI and it revealed a meniscus tear and that they were going to have surgery for it. So immediately everybody gets apoplectic. Well, don't worry, we'll therapize. We'll talk it out together, but let's go over the facts first. It happened at some point in the Raiders game. His knee got sore. He finished out. He played the 30 snaps he was supposed to play in the Raiders game and then complained about it later. So that indicates a degree of severity, right? He still was able to, play it, to tough it out and play through. And then he told people about it and they said, okay, no more toughing it out. Let's get this thing taken care of. The extent of the tear and therefore the procedure that is needed is unknown. We can't know. The doctors can't know. The Vikings can't know. J.J. McCarthy can't know. Until you get under the knife and you actually see the extent of the damage with a camera, you don't know exactly what is needed. So their plan is to give him surgery sometime this week, and then they'll either do the trim or the repair. This is the way Adam Schefter reported it. This is the way I think Kevin O'Connell just said it. So what does all that mean? So I wrote a big article at Wide Left. If you're a Wide Left subscriber, you can read that. But here's the nuts and bolts. There are two common procedures with the meniscus, and then a third, way rarer one that's not going to come up in situations like this. The third one is for degenerative damage for somebody who, tore their meniscus when they, 40 years ago and never fixed it. And then you actually take out the whole thing and you replace it with a cadaver one, sort of like ACL surgery is for athletes. That's probably not going to come up here. And is, way more invasive and stuff, like full on open surgery. The trim is sort of a temporary solution. Let's say the tear is microscopic. It's really, really small. If you leave it untreated, it'll get bigger, but it's really, really small. What they'll do is they'll actually they literally take surgical scissors and they just cut out the cartilage that is a problem. If they cut out that tear and that, stops any tearing from spreading, that solves the issue. The problem is now you have a smaller meniscus. You lost some meniscus material, and therefore the rest of the meniscus is under that much more stress. The meniscus is it's a bone between your femur and your tibia, and it just stops the bones from, it's like a brake pad. It stops the bones from grinding. So the less material there is, the more stress the rest of the material has to go under, and the worse it's going to degenerate. And eventually, if it degenerates enough, like when your car's brake pad is low, that can cause bones to grind against each other, pain, swelling, inflammation, and we call that arthritis. That's just like what arthritis is. That comes later in maybe even in his playing career, but certainly later in life. So you don't want to mess with that. The thing about the trim, though, is it's a much smaller procedure. The healing process is really quick. And in fact, a lot of patients can put weight on that leg right away after surgery. So you're not doing crutches and you're not doing all that stuff. You basically are just waiting for the incision to heal and waiting for the effects of the surgery. It's like a 4 to 8 week timeline, and you're like back all the way to full on athletic activity. So even in the worst case scenario with the trim, what would that be? With the bye week, with week 5? That would be the long end of the recovery timeline for the trim. The repair is a longer thing. That's if you have a tear that's too big for the meniscus to just be able to cut it out. You'd be cutting out too much material. Then you actually go in there and you put sutures in it and you need it to heal on its own. Here's the problem. The meniscus isn't great at healing on its own unless it's in the outer ring. The outer part of the meniscus is called the red zone, is the way they call it, but that's where there's more blood flow and therefore it's better at healing. The inner part, called the white zone, less blood flow, almost no blood flow actually, so not very good at healing. So if the tear is there, and by the way, if the tear is in the red zone, a lot of times they will say no surgery at all. That thing will just heal on its own. Just put a brace on it, you'll be fine, right? And a lot of meniscus tears, especially in non-athletes, just like in regular everyday people, will be wear a knee brace for a while and you'll be fine. But if it's in the white zone, you got to go in there, you got to put stitches in it, you have to have or sutures in it, you have to have a brace on it while it heals for like 8 weeks, just with the brace on it, and essentially doing no athletic work. And so the actual full recovery timeline, because you have to wait for this really slow, low blood flow part to heal, can be 6 to 9 months. That's the typical range. So there is your podcaster's breakdown of the meniscus. Obviously, if there are any like orthopedic doctors and I did something wrong, please let me know, because I want to make sure that I'm giving that information correctly. But based on the research I did, that's the best I can do. So if he gets the repair 6 to 9 months, that puts him at the top end of it. That puts him maybe getting back for like 1 week in December. Maybe he can play a meaningless week 18 game if you really want to push it. Or at the long end of it, he's back to full athletic activity in like March. And that gives him most of his offseason to continue working on mechanics and stuff. And we're pretty much looking at 2025. So that's the facts of it all. And which they need, they won't know until they see what kind of tear they have, where it is, and how big it is. The repair, I think, is a lot more likely if I had to guess on the situation. Unless that thing is microscopic, I don't think they want to mess with the trim. With the franchise quarterback, and just ethically, like you just don't want to do that to a guy and be like, okay, we'll get you now for 7 weeks of a season that's your rookie year that probably isn't going to be that good of a year anyway, and now you have knee arthritis for the rest of your life. That's a good trade-off, right, JJ? Like that just feels like kind of a scummy thing to do, and I don't think, and the way Kevin O'Connell talks about it, I think he would agree with that. So I'm going to guess that unless it's super microscopic, they'll err on the side of caution and they'll do the full repair, and that will functionally be JJ McCarthy's season. Let that sink in. Boy, that sucks. We were very excited about him. We got to be excited about him for something like 36 hours before the rug was pulled out from under us. And people are very mad and more. And I think this is the part of Locked On Vikings where we kind of have to talk this out together. This sucks. But I have a question. What it is that is specifically that you are mourning. Because JJ McCarthy will be fine. If you think about like, if this hadn't happened, first off, certainly a world where we never see JJ McCarthy, where Sam Darnold plays lights out, Jim McCarthy slowly incubates, and we weren't going to see him until 2025 anyways. And then things are functionally not that different. It does stunt his development a little bit. You wish he could develop, keep having these days of camp in preseason. He loses a bunch of reps there. Potentially loses a chunk of his offseason. It'll slow his development, but not destroy it. But slow it. He'll still get a year of being in the meeting rooms, though, and working on the whiteboard with Sam Darnold. That'll help the mental side of the game, so you don't lose that. So it has an effect, but not one that's worth, throwing away, cursing your whole fandom over. It's just a little bit of a bummer. But really, I think what happens here is long-term, JJ McCarthy will be fine for this. If they get the repair. If they get the trim, that could lead to long-term complications, which I don't think they want to risk. But if they get the repair and it's the long thing, he'll be fine at the end of the day, at the end of the year, right? Maybe not the end of the day, end of the year. It's just that we had to wait longer to see the thing that we were excited about. And I think that might be what a lot of us are mourning. Not that JJ McCarthy is dead and never going to be, and he is still, as much as he ever was, the future of the Vikings. And long term, this will not impact that, unless that 2 months of development turns out to be the difference between him being good or not, right? Which I doubt. Long term, he is still the guy. We just have to wait a little longer to see it. So, for me, that helps me process, to really know what it is that I'm bummed about. Not that the long-term prospects got worse, they just got slower. And I don't know about you, but I find that a lot easier to deal with. Let's put a pin in this for now, though. There's not that much else to say about it until we know the specifics. I'll keep you updated as I learn stuff. So instead, let's totally switch gears and talk about the other first-round rookie who also wasn't playing in the night practice, and we don't really know what the deal is with him. So that is also a thing. We'll see what happens there. But he did have a really good preseason debut, and I want to talk about it. So we'll do that next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. This summer, FanDuel is still giving you a new boost or bonus every single day. So check back with FanDuel.com or on the FanDuel app for boosts or bonus that might appeal to you, whether you're trying to gamble on MLB home run props or, pennant races or whatever's going on there, or NFL futures like the Vikings over under 7.5 wins. Right now, the under is at minus 168 and the over is at plus 134. So if you believe Sam Darnold can lead the Vikings to 8 or more wins, it is a very, very cheap line if you're into that kind of thing or whatever it is you want to gamble on at FanDuel. But just make sure you're checking out what all of the new the new boosts or bonus are right now. For example, you get $50 if you were for a friend, as I'm looking at it. There's also a ticket sweepstakes, all kinds of fun stuff to go do. So head on over to FanDuel.com. Make every moment more. Thank you so much for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day. Moving onward. When you're done here, by the way, to go check out Locked On Fantasy Football. If you got your fantasy draft coming up, you're looking for an edge, let Vinny Iyer give it to you. But moving on here, I want to talk about Dallas Turner. I don't know what his health status is at all, but regardless of that, his preseason debut was very awesome. And I'm not just talking about the sack, which was a good play, but there were other things that led to that sack that were very exciting. The way he kind of set up and knocked down Andres Pete. He was rushing from the same side most of the game. Until he got in with the twos, things moved around a little bit more, but with the ones, he was on the same side for most of the game. That is a little bit un-Flores-y. It's more of a Zimmer move. That's actually one of the key differences between the two guys is that Zimmer would have edge rushers rush from the same place all day, which means they'd go up against the same guy all day, which means that they could play long game with those guys. They could do the same move 10 times and then subvert it on a big moment. Danielle Hunter was an expert at that. With Flores, everybody's moving around and all the matchups that it creates a lot of chaos, makes things harder for the offense, takes that tool away from the defense, which is an acceptable cost to him. Two ways to, kill the same bird with a stone. That's not the phrase. But the point I'm making is that Dallas Turner showed a little bit of that propensity for that long game thought. And I think what I liked the most when I really honed in and looked at the plays that Dallas Turner had, the pass rush reps that he had in particular, is that I saw his brain working really smoothly and instinctually understanding what he's supposed to be doing. Let me tell you what I mean by that. There is a rep. It turns into an RPO. So this is a pass completion. It's one of the quick throws. I forget if it's the one that Byron Murphy missed the tackle on or the one right after it that Caleb Evans made the tackle on. It doesn't matter to me. It was a power RPO. So they could have run power with one puller coming from the backside, or they throw this smoke route, this now route, if you rather. But I'll call that smoke, where the guy doesn't run a route at all. He just turns around and catches the ball. You throw it to him right away. The read was a throw, but the puller came around and everybody else blocks down. That means away from the play. So when you feel a down block, you want to, they'll call it surf it. You want to stay in the gap you're supposed to be in, and his was the C gap between the tackle, and there was a tight end over there. You want to stay in that C gap and move with it. And that works when it's a zone run as well. So if you feel linemen working one way, you want to stay in the gap as like you want to move laterally with them and stay in that gap. This has to be instinctual. And so you'll actually see at practices, you'll see them working this by essentially having a scout lineman or just another D lineman, feign a down block away from them, or even like a coach can do it. And you'll have them down block one way or another and work that reflex of, hey, my peripheral vision saw the guy, one gap over from me, move further away from me. My instinct is to go with him. So this is Bama coaching kicking in, that he was able to do that. And the other possibility on that rep, by the way, is it could have just been a call where he slashes, where he's just going to that gap. He's just going to go that way anyways. And it just like fortuitously happened to line up. That could be the way. But even if that's the case, the other half of this is that there had to be quite an athleticism on that get off to be able to get off laterally, to have a good horizontal step. Other reps have a great vertical step for him, like your classic get off the ball, win with speed kind of deal, especially once he got up against the twos. And number 77 on the Raiders, I don't know who he is, but he was out of his depth when he was against Dallas Turner. He did not have the kick slide to take care of that guy's get off. So you had that vertical get off, and we've known that about him. But the horizontal get off was really cool to see as well. But either way, it was disruptive. When you are able to feel that, hey, there's these, if there's a lot of down blocking, somebody is coming around the other end to blow you up. And if you're the guy in that C gap, or if there's no tight end, it'd be the B gap. If you're the guy who's not on the very outside, but the next guy in, and you can penetrate, and you can get in there, and you can find that puller, and you can crack him and blow him up, you do that. You go put your body on the line, you blow up that puller, and now somebody else can make the play. This was something that really kind of got my ears to perk up a little bit when I watched him at Bama, was the willingness to do unselfish things that have a phenomenal impact on the play and virtually destroy his chances to actually make the play. He did a lot of that at Alabama when he needed to, depending on what the run scheme was. And you saw that on this play. He blew up the puller. Ivan Pace was coming around. So I do think that was a slanting run fit then, because Ivan Pace was kind of like looping around with it. Josh Metellus was also filling from depth. Those two guys would have been one-on-one. He didn't get all of the puller. He got enough of the puller where whoever got that puller was not going to get cracked, where the actual momentum and impact, that would into Dallas Turner's body. And then his teammate could essentially attack a sitting duck and would have been able to make a great play. That is unselfish. That's very much team play. And that shows awareness, right? That's immediately diagnosing and understanding what you're up against, no matter if it was a slash or not. Diagnosing and understanding what you're up against and understanding how to attack it. Very cool stuff. And that has nothing to do with the really cool pass rush stuff. That is what I'm going to talk about next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by BetterHelp. BetterHelp is online therapy made easy. So if you have been thinking about getting into therapy, but maybe you just can't make it work with your schedule, that's kind of what BetterHelp is designed to help you solve. It's online, it's flexible, it's suited to your schedule. It can be on the phone, it can be via video chat, whatever you're comfortable with, whatever you can facilitate, they can work that out. They'll hook you up with a therapist that they think is right for you. And here's the kicker of it all, If you don't like that therapist, that's no big deal. You can switch at any time for no additional charge. And I strongly encourage that you take advantage of that particular feature. A lot of people get into therapy, don't like their therapist, and then assume all of the other therapists will be exactly like that and go, it's not for me. And I think they're robbing themselves of the opportunity to, I'll say, maximize their mental health, maintain mental health, even if you don't have something going on that you really need to talk to somebody about, which is a great reason to get into therapy, but maintenance is as well. So if you do that and you get a therapist that's maybe not for you, just switch. No additional charge. BetterHelp is set up to help you out with that. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Moving right along with Dallas Turner talk here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. Actually, while I'm here, one real quick other thing. The Vikings waived injured Jabril Cox and signed a different veteran linebacker named Jordan Kunicic, I bet. He has been in the league for a while as an undrafted free agent for the Panthers in 2019. He played for the Washington football team for a couple years, Browns for a couple years, and now here. So he's kind of been around making teams. So this might be a more serious player. Jabril Cox, I don't know what happened to him. Kind of got hurt right away. It happens with people, but that's something to note. We'll talk about him more if it comes up, but continuing on with the Dallas Turner conversation. So here's the pass rush deal, right? I kind of started talking about it with the whole idea of like rushing against the same guy all day long. So something that Andres Pete was doing that was causing L's, that was a problem for him, was that he was too eager with his arms. He was bringing his arms out too fast. He was kind of reacting to everything. So one rep that happened that sort of set up the rest of them was Dallas Turner got off the ball a little bit slow. He was trying to ready himself to take a chip from a tight end, and that tight end wasn't chipping. This was a 3rd and short, by the way. So his tight end goes out for the flat. He plays it a little bit slow. But when he gets actually into Andres Pete, he takes one jab step right in between Andres Pete's feet. You basically want to step, it's a little crass, but you want to step right into his crotch. That'll make him feel it and start to do his counter stuff, right? So that made Andres Pete do two things. He put his leg behind him, and he put his arm out, right? So your leg was behind you. That gives you a nice, stable, kind of like in the way an A-frame works, right? That gives you kind of a nice hit of stability. And then your arm comes out, you play it really long, and you try to get a hand on him, and now you're starting with your pass pro, right? But his next step continued upfield. So that arm ended up missing kind of behind him and getting his downfield shoulder, which when you're dipping, when you're trying to like speed rush around the corner, that shoulder is about to dip. So attacking it kind of sucks. And he was essentially induced that attack. To recover from this, Andres Pete started moving his feet a little bit faster, losing that nice stable base of power, to which Dallas Turner responded with a long arm. Get one long arm into him, and then rush via that. Put all the power you can through that one arm like a battering ram and blow him up. This was the play that I believe it was still Aiden O'Connell threw kind of behind the receiver, and it ended up actually being sort of like a tipped ball high and incomplete, and the Raiders were done. I think they would kick a field goal after that. But he really blew him up, and it was definitely, it wasn't quite a sack, or, O'Connell did a good job of stepping up in the pocket and like sort of reducing that pressure, but that has nothing to do with your pass rush, right? You made the quarterback respond. That's a W. That play appeared to really set up the next couple of pass rushes, where if you kind of remember, like near the end of the last drive that Aiden O'Connell was in, that ended in that Dallas Turner sack, didn't it kind of feel like he was getting closer and closer and closer every time? That set up all of those pass rushes. Where now, because that long arm kind of bull rushy thing, Andres Pete didn't want any part of that again. So every time Dallas Turner would basically flash his hand, and it looked like he was just kind of swiping at air, it would induce the hands. And once if the hands come out before anybody engages, like there is sort of a rule of pass pro that whoever gets their hands on the other guy first wins. But you can sort of turn that on its head if you can bring out the lineman's hands at an inopportune time, and then you can counter them. And then you kind of have the initiative back in your court. So this happened like 3 times in a row where Andres Pete would put his hands out and sort of react to that swipe. That swipe was, that long arm's coming. I got to counter it. I can't let him get his hand in my chest like that again and blow me up, right? I got to counter it. So his hands would come out and counter it, do whatever his plan was for that play. And Dallas Turner was, now that his hands are out in front of him Frankenstein style, I call Fred Flintstone style, right? Running after Barney Rubble. You can now swipe those away, right? I mean, they're like out in front of you. They're the biggest target in the world. You can attack them however you want, from above, from below, from the side, 2-hand club, swipe, like whatever you want. Cross chop, and defeat the hands, defeat the man, right? Once you got his hands out of his way, he kind of can't block you without those. So you can dip under him, get your toe around, get your toe twisted, get your hips around, you're good to go. And then you can get a hit on Aiden O'Connell. And eventually that led to the sack itself as well. And something about the sack that I think is, it doesn't matter. It doesn't change the stat at all, but I think it's just cool athleticism, is you got a sack and you didn't go to the ground. No knees touched the ground, Dallas Turner, on his sack. It doesn't matter. It's just cool, but like, God, so cool. So I guess that's a quick overview of the Dallas Turner pass rush experience and the run game experience and stuff. So the athleticism was really cool. These long stridey steps, using his length, using his quickness and all that stuff. The athleticism is really cool and we knew about it. But I think what we can learn about Dallas Turner from this one is just how much thinking that he's doing. And in a good way, right? Just because he is reacting instinctually and he's not hesitating like he's in his head thinking, but how much strategy there is to it. Maybe that's a better way to put it. How much strategy there is to what he is doing. That there is brain power behind this, and it's not just, try to get off fast and go, and eventually maybe you'll get off faster than the guy. Once the second team tackle came in, by the way, that is kind of what started happening. The guy just couldn't get around the edge, or couldn't get to the corner fast enough, and Dallas Turner got around him and got some other pressure that way. But that was only for a few reps. Dallas Turner didn't play too much with the twos, and then he came off the field. But against the real NFL guy in Andres Pete, who's not my favorite lineman, but he is an NFL starter and an experienced one. Against a guy like that, you could really see the process and the strategy, and I loved that. And mix that with the athleticism and the youthful exuberance and all that. Health notwithstanding, I don't know what the deal is there. This dude's a dude. He is real. I had the same thought I had when I saw Jordan Addison in camp for the first time last year, where I was like, yep, he's real. Okay, draft hype was real. Yep, he is who we thought. That's what I'm feeling about Dallas Turner. Okay, yep. He is the kind of guy that we thought he was, that everybody thought should be a top 10 pick, and went, third defender off the board. Yep, warranted, good player. Vikings got him. Happy. I don't need to see him for the rest of the preseason. If he's not healthy, put him on ice. Don't care. We're done. Cleveland joint practices are coming up. I also have a little bit of the Everman series left, so we are going to keep doing that, especially in these in between moments of the preseason games where it's like there's no reason to preview the Cleveland Browns. I don't really care about them, and it's not like we're trying to beat them. We're just practicing against them. So that is what's coming down the docket for the next couple weeks, and then a bye week, and then the season starts. Oh my God. Got some really cool stuff this year, some expansions on some things, stuff I'm excited to share with you. So I will see you all for that. And as always, Skull.